Might have been on Facebook. Okay, somebody asked me, I remember off the top of my head, somebody asked me, what is governance? What is governance? So governance, a lot of times, is mapped like this. Like governance is linked to compliance, is linked to risk. They have a lot of there's a lot of cross pollinations for these three concepts. Governance in a nutshell is information assurance. So it's protection of information. It's managing the information in an organization. So it's not just digital information, by the way. It can be printed material. It can be hard copies of information, but it's protection of the information. It's not just, the thing is, governance is not just protection of the information. It's managing the information. Like it's making sure that all the data, that's all you have, all the data, including printed, digital, whatever you have, is governed. That means managed, controlled in some way. And then if you don't need it, that includes that if you don't need the information, if it is not important, you got to get rid of it, because you don't want to store information, a bunch of useless information that you don't need anymore. And you don't want to have important information around that you don't need it anymore, that it could get leaked out. So if it's not governed, a lot of larger, especially larger organizations, they have a lot of ungoverned data, meaning it's just out there. It's just sitting on a hard drive and nobody needs it anymore, and it's not being deleted. It's not being updated. It's time to get rid of it. Right? So that's governance, managing the information. It's very similar to information management and information assurance, where you're doing everything to protect that data, and not only protect it, but get rid of it if you don't need it anymore. So that includes, in governance, you're talking about audits. Like you got to do audits, not just cybersecurity audits and assessments, but I'm talking about audits on the information, like making sure you don't have a bunch of useless data out there floating around, and making sure that you're updated any kind of documents that you are going to keep around. So that's governance, right? And then control activities to control that information, strategies for managing the information. All of this dealing with governance, is dealing with information management. Then you got compliance. So that's what we talk about a lot. Compliance is risk management framework, essentially. It's making sure that our organization is in line with the federal, the state, and the industry standards. Making sure that we have, for example, if you are doing PCI compliance, all of those little devices, you got to make sure that those devices are tracked at all times. And if they have to be outdated, you got to get rid of them and replace them. Right? Compliance, that's compliance with one standard of within your industry is PCI. If you're in the DoD, for example, they have top secret, secret, and unclassified information. They have other classifications as well. But they got to make sure that that information does not spill from one zone of classification to another. That's one of the things that they have to do for compliance. They have to comply with the government standards, the federal government standards on how to protect that classified material. Right? They have to also, if it's ready to get rid of that information, they have to get rid of it appropriately. So you could see where governance, where you're managing the data, managing information, cross-pollinates with compliance. Because some compliance says you have to govern the information. And governance means that you have to comply with federal regulations. And then you got risk. Risk is dealing with prioritizing the information and figuring out where your important assets are and what is the risk to those assets. What is the risk to the asset means, like important information or important system. That an asset is like, if you were to lose this information or the system, what would the impact be to our organization? How much money would we use? How much time would we lose? Could we actually lose people's lives? Could we actually lose our business? Right? So that's why GRC is kind of put together: governance, compliance, and risk, because you have to prioritize. Think about it. You have to prioritize the assets and the information to make sure that you know what to protect. What is the risk to my organization if I lose this system? What is the risk to my bottom line? Right? So risk management. And then compliance ties right into risk management framework. I mean, risk management framework is literally determining the risk to your organization if you were to lose the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of the information, right? That's how you actually determine the risk. And then governance means making sure we're not keeping any data around that we don't need. And then if we do have it, did we update it? We got to make sure this is updated, right? So that's what governance is, and it ties, and that's what GRC is. They all tie together. There's a lot of overlap between them. And governance, really, like the old term, information assurance and information management is what we used to call it. I mean, that's like a new term for me because I've been doing this for so long.